Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Trail Talk Highpointing podcast. I'm your host, Lauren, and the high pointers that I'm speaking with again today are Tom and Tommy, the co-editors of the Apex to Zenith magazine, and my very first podcast guests. Tom and Tommy, welcome back to the show.
Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always a pleasure to have you both on the show. And today I just want to talk a little bit about the most recent issue of A2Z that came out. We'll talk about what's coming up in the next issue and then just what's going on in the High Point world.
Good.
Yeah, so for everyone on YouTube who's watching, this is what the most recent issue looks like. And that is Tommy, right?
Yeah.
On the cover, you're going through, you went off trail on Mount Rogers and you found one of those cool rock formations, right? You went through there?
Yes.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yep. I think it was on the way back. We kind of ventured out a little bit, right?
Yeah, that's fun. That's fun. And I like it's called Highpointing the Trail Less Traveled.
Yeah, and ironically, perhaps, we were kind of dragged off the trail by Jen, whose screen name I think is Jen on the Trail, but she took us off the trail, and she was great. She was somebody that we met at the very beginning of the hike, right? I mean, I think we just hit a certain point, and she was there. We started a conversation. We ended up hiking with her, and she was fantastic because she I think had done Mount Rogers before, or certainly was a very experienced climber, and encouraged us to explore a variety of different locations. You know, we were sort of like heading to the high point and heading back, and she was like, no, over here, this part is really awesome, and check out this place. And that's where that picture that you just showed came from, was, because she sort of veered us off.
It could look like you're canyoneering in Utah or something, but when you open the magazine and actually read, you find out that you're at Mount Rogers.
Yeah,
Virginia.
Yeah. And look, you just did Mount Rogers, right?
Yeah, I did. So
did you
fun.
see that? I mean, wasn't that very different?
Yeah, I did not go off trail. I did a lot of reading about it. I watched a lot of videos, and I knew where the other peaks were within the park, and I could see them. I was just like, maybe I'll do it next time. I don't know. It was my first long hike since I got pregnant and had my daughter, so I'm just kind of getting back into things. But we had a great time. I went with a friend of mine who's also a new member of the High Pointers Club, and you'll see a picture of us in the next issue of A2Z. And we actually stayed at New River State Park in North Carolina, so about 40 minutes south of Grayson Highlands. And it was right on the river. It was a beautiful campsite, and we actually lucked out with a really beautiful day on the trail. And before I do a mountain, I always look at mountainforecast.com, and Mount Rogers is on there, but I was reading about the weather, and it said it was going to be 30-mile-per-hour winds. And I thought, but the skies were clear and everything. The temperature was reasonable, and I thought,
sounds like Mount Washington.
Yeah.
I wonder where those winds would be 30 miles an hour.
And so I'm like, that's really strange. We're in Grayson Highlands.
Just stand behind the bull.
I didn't see any bulls. I only saw ponies, and they were definitely pregnant ponies. Either they're extremely well nourished, but I can't imagine that.
At least you saw the ponies. That's good.
So we're walking through Grayson Highlands, and I'm not feeling these winds. I'm like, what is this? What was it talking about? Then we turn a corner, like around one of those rock formations, and we are just slammed with this 30-mile-per-hour wind that I was reading about.
Really?
And so there were a couple other people just standing there, and we're all just like kind of shocked at the wind. And it was some other AT hikers, and I noticed they're all staring at one location. I was like, what are they looking at? So I look in that direction, and there's this bird. It's a very big bird, and it's trying to fly against the wind, but it couldn't.
No
it kept it looked like a paper airplane just going back and forth.
Oh, that's crazy. That's pretty cool, though.
Yeah, but my favorite part about that hike was the forest, right when you get to the high point. And I obviously have the advantage of talking to a lot of people who have done high points. And
Right.
I was talking to Skymar Thaler. He does the Rooftops of America YouTube channel.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And he told me about that forest. He's was saying it was this out of, not out of body experience, but just a different experience. He's like, you're just transformed into this other world and you feel like you're in the rainforest in the Pacific Northwest or something like that. And he's like, it's just amazing. I thought, wow, must be pretty nice.
Yeah.
And it was. It was just amazing because, it was such a windy day and that's all you could hear for the second half of the hike. And then you enter this forest and suddenly it is silent. Everything is green. It's like mossy.
Yeah.
It's damp. It's dewy. It's moist.
It's very
And
unique, right?
Temperature,
yeah,
it feels moist, but it feels like colder and moist, but you're not cold. Like it's just,
yeah, it's like a
You know,
temperature drop too. And it was
yeah.
just so silent. And I'm like, wow, what
Yeah.
happened?
Yeah.
That was so cool.
Ah,
It's very different from most high points. You want to get there and it's barren and there's nothing except the view. There
Yeah.
you're sort of encompassed, by it all around you.
Yeah,
And
it was an
cool.
experience, that whole forest. And of course, my friend Mary and I, we took pictures and we looked at the pictures and we're like, this is trash. Like, you have to be here.
yeah. Yeah. You gotta feel it. You gotta feel the space, right? It's,
You do. Yeah.
yeah, we spent some time in there too. We saw some, I think, fellow
They
high
had a young
pointers.
family there,
That's
right?
right.
I think they
Yeah.
had their young son with them. Actually, you know what it was? He was wearing a high pointer cap.
Yeah.
And we went right before the convention, I think, right?
Yes.
Yes, because we met Austin and Nicole.
Right.
And
who
they
were
were on
going
their
to
way
the
to Georgia.
convention.
That's
So
right.
a lot of convention
Yeah.
people were there. Yeah, it was great. It was great. And we had a beautiful day, too.
Yeah. Yeah. We
Nice.
lucked out. I mean, the next day it rained. So, yeah, we
So Rogers it's got a little bit of everything, right? It's got,
it really does. Yeah.
it's wide open, but then it's covered and,
Yeah, and
rocks.
there's some
Almost.
rocky terrain in there
Yeah.
too. I just missed Tony Cobb and Mary Montigny. They were
Oh,
both
really?
podcast guests, also 50 state high pointers. Tony was in Damascus, and I want to meet up with them, but
They're doing the AT now, right?
right,
They're
right,
like 600 miles in. I've been following. He's been doing a really good job
yeah.
updating
I
their
love his
progress
updates, and
on
yeah,
social
yeah,
media, and I've been following along, and it's awesome because you can feel them figuring it out as they get further
you're right.
along,
You're
right? Like in the very beginning, it was like, what have we got ourselves into? And then they're like, as they hit each milestone, as they hit different states.
It's fun to watch, especially in North Carolina. Mary Montigny, she sent me a message on Facebook and she's like, it is cold here. Like there's so much snow. I had no idea. I'm like, me neither, because I'm not in that part of North Carolina, but good luck.
Yeah.
And she talked about Hot Springs, North Carolina. That was really beautiful. And I'm like, oh, I should probably go out there. And yeah, and they're kind of trailing each other, or no, they go like back and forth. But
Right.
it's so fun to watch their progress. And then we're going to pretty soon here watch the terrain kind of change too.
Right.
And of course,
Right,
being
right.
50 state high pointers, both of them, they know parts of the trail already.
Mhm.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
Where did we do the AT? Klingsman's Dome?
that's part of
Yes.
it. Yeah.
I think 17 miles we were on that. That was I think that might be the only
That's
one
right. We met 2 or 3
we
trail
met.
hikers. That's where we met Mage, and we met a few.
We met Mage, and then Mage, the horse, won the Kentucky Derby.
That's right.
Oh, maybe
Exactly.
a horse. You met a horse.
Well, no, Mage is a trail name for a gentleman who we
We met somebody
Oh,
named
oh.
Mage, and then the Kentucky
called the
Derby
Kentucky
came.
Piper.
I forgot the
We're
trail.
trying
Yeah,
to figure
yeah,
out who do we
really.
bet on, and there's a horse named Mage,
Yeah.
and then neither of us bet on him, and he won. Maybe you bet on him. I don't know.
Oh, you'll never
20/20
know.
hindsight. Mage on that AT wasn't very fast, though. So
We both bet on
he was
him.
taking his time.
He had a briefcase full of cash, and then we went to Pittsburgh. I don't know. Anyway, but no, yeah, that was quite the experience. You could feel that felt different too, right? The different type of people walking through, the through hikers, and I think we got a little bit of that at Rogers. I think we crossed it for a minute. The AT, right?
Yeah, you're on there for about 3 miles or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
There's people camping out overnight on the way back.
Yeah.
We met some women on horseback
Yes.
coming down the mountain from
That was a
those.
perfect one for you to get back into the game.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
That was a good one to get
I agree.
restarted into it, and
I
I'm glad you
agree.
had perfect weather for it too.
Hmm. Yeah, it was it's not high altitude. It's mostly just like a distance game.
Right.
So, yeah, it was perfect. And yeah, like I said, my friend Mary and I, that was her second high point. So we had a great time, and
So now she's hooked.
she
Once
is.
you've got two under your belt,
you
She
start.
is.
you're official.
That's a good one to
One,
start
you're
with.
questionable. Two, you're in.
Right? Yes. I don't need three. I can
Right.
connect.
One could just be a coincidence. You just
We
have
can
to
connect to A to
find it.
B. Yep.
Once you
She's in.
got two, it's a pattern.
That's right. Yeah, so hoping to bring her around to a couple more.
What was
Uh,
her first one?
Louisiana. She's another military spouse, and so her husband and my husband are friends. They're
We
both in
love
the army,
Louisiana.
Yeah.
and she's stationed. She and her husband are stationed in Louisiana right now, and so they went
Oh,
to
interesting.
Driscoll Mountain. Yeah,
That was a very cool one.
The graveyard.
The Enfield
I
Parish.
mentioned that to her. The graveyard. Yeah,
There was
Yeah.
only two names. There was like two names in the whole
Two
graveyard.
names.
Two families. I loved it.
yeah,
Nothing like a grudge. I love it. You
Yeah,
know.
that was kind of an eerie one too, because we were there at dusk. So
Yeah.
it was like very, just the setting was eerie, and then there's this old church and the graveyard.
It, yeah,
Really
good part. We
funny
underestimated how long it was
lights
going to
go
take
right
to get out.
through there. It was like a whole world.
yeah. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, speaking
yeah.
of other 50 state high pointers, I noticed. I'm sorry. Speaking of other 50 state high pointers and podcast guests, I noticed Hugh Rothwell has a nice article in A to Z, which is funny because he mentioned, right, he's like, yeah, I've been meaning to write an article and send it into A to Z. He mentioned that on the podcast, and so I was really happy to see his story in this issue because he's
Yeah.
great guy. 50 state high pointer, has so much, really, he has so many cool stories and just a lot of experience.
Yeah, and I thought his like completion story was awesome.
That's right.
Because he had like the whole group with him, and
Yeah.
just seemed very,
Yeah.
very celebratory, which it should be.
And then Sunny Strower,
yes,
she was on. I did a community spotlight episode for Awe Summit Scholarship and Awe Expeditions, and I saw that she talked about mountaineering and high pointing and where they intersect, and then she
Right.
talked about the Summit Scholarship Foundation. So
here's where the Sunny. Okay, you spoke to Sunny first.
yeah,
First, Lucy Westlake
hmm
introduced, I think, you and I to Sunny,
that's right.
right? And then you interviewed her. Podcast was awesome. And then she was actually the very first person, and this is something we're going to try to do more and more of in Apex to Zenith, is interview people for, like, rather than them writing an article and sending it, us kind of modeling what you do on the podcast, but doing it in print.
I like
So,
that. Yeah,
Asking
that's good.
some questions. And what I didn't realize when I spoke to Sunny was that she was on the heels of going and doing this unbelievably
The Iditarod.
like epic Iditarod,
Yeah.
Alaskan, first woman ever to cross country ski in these conditions that were just
Mhm.
unreal. And so I interviewed her, I spoke to her, she was absolutely awesome.
Yeah, she
Really,
is.
really great. Down to earth, like great. And then I'm like tracking her and following this accomplishment that was unreal.
It was massive. I know.
Yeah,
Following that was so cool. And it's just like you see content of just her in these freezing conditions. Of course, you don't feel that, but you just look at it and you're like, that looks cold.
Yeah.
And,
you kind of do feel it. You look at it and you're like, oh, right now.
I think I feel it. You know.
But I'm telling you, she is somebody, Sunny Stroeer, Stroeer.
Hmm.
Google her, and
Yeah.
you'll just be blown away by, she's like the quintessential epitome of an adventure athlete. Like the
I
things
agree.
that she does are off the charts.
And
Yeah,
she
and
took the
on
time to talk to you before going on the epic adventure, right?
Yeah, and
yeah,
like took the time in just a very, I don't know, very humble. You would never know in the conversation. You would think you met somebody in the grocery store and you were just chatting and talking, and meanwhile,
exactly.
like, oh my God, what you're going to do here is unreal.
Yeah, she's so fascinating. And on the episode, when I asked her, like, how'd you get into the outdoors? How'd you get started? She told me about her upbringing in her home country, but then also she, worked in corporate America for a number of
Right.
years
Right.
and left that and started an adventure company. And I noticed that when I do a lot of the community spotlight episodes and I talk to these people who run these organizations that use the outdoors to benefit the lives of their communities and the lives of other individuals, that they're the perfect person to be doing exactly what they're doing. Like they have this background in management or,
Yes.
leadership
He
or
was a
business or
management
something.
consultant.
Yeah. And
You know,
then they
like,
also are these very talented outdoor adventurers. And then
right.
they combine those two things to do exactly what they're doing. And that's what, that was kind of Sunny's story too, I found.
Yeah, interesting. Well, do you remember the very first episode when you were asking about books and documentaries and other things? I had mentioned to you To Shake the Sleeping Self,
Oh yeah, that's his
Jedediah
story
Jenkins,
too. Yeah.
right? And he had a very similar sort of, starting point where he was a lawyer. He
Yep.
hit a point where he was like, I don't want to be a lawyer anymore. I want to do something. Now, Sunny was very different in that, she grew up as this, I think she grew up overseas in
Yeah.
Germany. I think she grew up in Germany or
Hmm.
Austria, Germany, as a climber and a skier, and she had that athletic background.
Hmm.
Whereas Jedediah Jenkins didn't, but he ended up riding his bicycle, down the coast and across Central America, and had this epic story. His thing was he was and still is a phenomenal writer. So
That's
he
right.
was able to take
He has a
his skills
gift.
and talents and combine them together. But through the adventure and through leaving the corporate world and going into, the world of adventure.
That was a great book. But that's what I love about High Pointers is because I always love a good story about somebody who, was in had the corner office and all that, and they just dropped it all and they, got out into the wilderness. I love that.
Mhm.
But
Right, right.
that's not the majority of us.
Yeah.
And what I like about High Pointing is a lot of us we have our families, we have our jobs, and we find time to do this super weird niche check off list.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's a list, but it's not just, checking off a peak. It's also throwing yourself into the adventure in so many ways. And, as if you listen to the John Mitchell episodes, one list can lead to another list and that can
It's
lead to
just
another
it's,
list. And
Right.
and you got John Mitchell.
Yeah. Yeah.
Takes it and goes
yeah,
to the extreme, and
Yeah.
that was a fascinating episode.
yeah,
Tommy
yeah.
and I
He's
know
a wealth
John,
of
love
information.
John, but I learned so much
Hmm.
from that in
Yeah.
terms of just, not only all of the different things that he has teed up and that he's doing, but just how amazing his knowledge base is
Yeah.
of all. I mean, you were focused on national parks,
Hmm.
and I was commenting to you earlier, every question you asked him, he
You know,
not only knew the answer, he knew the history of it and how it came about, and he knew the backstory. Amazing. I mean, I was blown away by how
yeah. John
knowledgeable.
reminds me of another guest, Mihai, the
Yes.
Romanian American high pointer. They're both just encyclopedias of high points, and also Patty, who has her own column in A2Z about the history of how these high points got their names. I
Yeah.
love that
That was a good one.
the magazine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was a good one.
yeah. I
I
like
think
that.
it's interesting. Like, yeah, people give up the executive lifestyle, right, to go into the wilderness, as you say,
Yeah.
and it's like I have kids going through college now and those types of things. They're like, what do you want to do when you grow up? What do you want to be? You're going to decide when you're 15 now or 16. Everyone, it's all funneled into different silos, and
Hmm.
that's the world. The world where you go from corporate to the woods makes more sense to me, right? You just you kind of keep challenging yourself. You stay curious, and you just kind of see where it takes you. I think a lot of the stuff early on now is just too labeled and too
Yeah.
Everyone's kind of just locked into what they think they should be doing, and they don't give the outdoors a shot, right? So I think I'm always encouraging the kids to go outside. Just go outside, right? Just start.
The lesson is you can pivot at any point, right?
Yeah.
Right.
It's not like you're locked in.
Yeah.
You go down the path of, corporate America, you become a lawyer, you become a consultant, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You can say, all right, I'm doing something new now, which is
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's like the older you get, the more it makes sense.
yes.
I like,
Yes. Right.
yeah.
Exactly. But I think Mitchell, retaining all that information, he must really be present as he's going through all of the things, right? I think we do get away from the job and we do our thing in the Highpointing Trail, but and I never feel rushed when I'm there, but I know it's fit into an overall bigger schedule, right? So I don't think I take enough time on the way home or the couple of days when we get back to kind of absorb it and think about it. Maybe I got to start doing that a little bit more instead of just getting right back into the flow of every day because I don't remember anything. I look at the pictures.
I capture some of the stuff on social media that, you only get a small little snapshot, but at least it prompts your memory, like,
Right.
oh, right, that happened and this happened.
So the pictures are always good.
And the pictures remind you,
Well, speaking of pictures, I'm going to submit one for the next issue for listeners who are interested in submitting photos. What's the timeline?
Okay, so what we are in process of doing is getting back on track for quarterly Apex to Zenith issues. So there was a little stretch of time where there was a gap and, we've been sort of catching up. Mm-hmm. So our most recent issue, which you just highlighted, which was Q1, our spring issue, is going to be very rapidly followed by Q2, our summer issue, which will be out by June 1st. So very soon. So that's actually pretty far down the path right now. Mm-hmm. Pictures, articles, ideas, all of those things, we're always open to them. They won't be in this next issue. At this stage, they will be in the following issue.
Okay.
Which will be September 1st.
If they meet the standards of the issue.
Yes, of course. If they meet the rigorous Apex to Zenith screening process.
That's correct.
Which is basically
we thank everyone who's already sent them in.
To us.
Right.
But, look, we in this upcoming issue, I actually throw out a little bit of a plea to people.
Okay.
That might be too strong a word. A request to people.
A humble request.
The issue is only as good as the content and the pictures and the stories and what people send us. And because there's not a lot of, we're starting the Sonny Stroweir type interviews, but, the vast lion's share of what we are able to put in Apex to Zenith comes from our members. So don't be shy. Send things. Send the pictures you've got. Send the stories you've got. And, we appreciate them and we'll do everything we can to get them in to the magazine as soon as we're able to.
And for listeners who are High Pointers Club members and get the A2Z magazine on a quarterly basis, I will be writing a column in A2Z now. Should I say what it's about?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I'm doing a little outdoor adventure literature review. So at the end of every episode, I always ask, what are some books, documentaries, or podcasts that guests have that they would like to recommend to listeners? And when people recommend books, I always read them or I listen to them on audiobooks. And then I have a library of my own. And I'm going to start writing one recommendation a quarter and put it out there. And then I'm also going to take recommendations from guests and include those in the column. Because I know that high pointers, we can't be high pointing all the time, and we do love outdoor adventure. And I think one of the best ways to immerse yourself in that when you're not in the outdoors is to read about it. And there's a lot of books out there. There's a lot of documentaries. There's a lot of storytelling from people that do not just climbing, but any outdoor endeavor. And that's what I plan on writing about once a quarter.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome because first of all, you have a very unique perspective because you talk to so many people who are high pointers and even a little bit extended beyond high pointing, outdoor adventurers, right? And from
Trail
that,
talk.
Yeah,
you've
Chuck.
got
Yeah.
such an interesting perspective and get great recommendations. So, what we're trying to provide people is just interesting information and certainly good ideas of what to watch and what to read are going to be right sort of in the sweet spot there.
So you're gonna put the also eligibles there, the ones that didn't make it,
Ooh,
to the number one slot.
honorable mention.
Honorable mention.
Well, yeah. So I'll pick one
Yeah.
feature, and that'll be, the book that I recommend. And it'll be, of course, a book that I've read.
Right.
And then
Of course.
I'm going to give some honorable mentions, also content that I've consumed, books, documentaries, podcasts, that are, just as good, just not the best of the
It's
quarter.
not there. We're going to have the adjunct High Pointer Book Club as the next wave of all this.
Wait a minute.
Oh, wait, I shouldn't have said that.
Wait a
That'll be
minute.
but
That is really
gotta think
good.
that one through.
I have a book on deck about public lands, and
Oh, okay.
it's
That's
good.
interesting.
It's good because
Nice.
That was a hot topic a year ago or so. There's
I feel like
a lot of
it's-
stories out.
Well, this is kind of like, have you seen the Ken Burns documentary, America's National Parks, or the National Parks, America's Greatest Idea?
Yes.
It's
You
along
did
those
not
lines.
see it. You guys, you talked about it with John Mitchell, right?
It's the best.
Is it really good?
It's his finest work, Ken
I was
Burns.
watching it last night, right? I mean, it's always kind of on, isn't it?
Your cousin Ken.
But,
I don't
yeah,
know. Okay.
But yeah, that son of a bitch in Hollywood. I haven't talked to him in 10 years.
I bought it on Amazon, so I watch it like
Okay.
once or twice a year. I actually like to watch it around Christmas. I don't know why.
I was watching literally last night.
Isn't it the best?
Yeah. Whose voice is that? That's
So Tom Hanks has a voice in it.
I'm trying to think.
I
Yeah.
don't know who else it is, but the first time I saw that documentary, I just kind of binge watched it. Of course, it took all day. And then that night when I finished it, I'm like, I have to go to a national park right now. So I was living in Yuma, Arizona at the time, and I opened up the recreation.gov app and I was like, what's around me? Use the GPS. So Joshua Tree National Park was the closest, and I found a camping spot in the winter, which is hard. And I just booked it, and I'm like, I'm going there. I have to.
In that moment.
That's what, well, I went the next day, but
What?
that's what that documentary does to you.
It just inspires you. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really
I think
does.
same thing. I think it probably stayed with me, right? I mean, that was on, that's a long one, right? That's a long
is,
one, but they
yeah.
take their time. I think I went on a Teddy Roosevelt binge after that.
Oh,
I think
yeah.
everything I could get on him, pretty
He was
amazing.
pivotal in
Yeah,
the
I think,
national parks, specifically the Grand Canyon.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's so I've read a lot about him, and it's pretty impressive that he had the foresight to create the national park systems. And he was out at all those. He was out there. There's what's the book he called? I forget about it.
He went out with John Muir when people wanted him at like a state dinner or something.
Yeah.
And he ditched it to hang
Right.
out in the Sequoia Meadows with John Muir and camp for the night. Didn't tell
And-
anyone. But my favorite quote in that documentary was he was talking about the Grand Canyon, and people were trying to capitalize on it and charge people for going through and set up little shops in the canyon and stuff like that, just basically ruining it. And he established it as a national monument. And when he did that, he said, gosh, what did he say? Like, don't change it, or you cannot improve it. Leave it as it is. You cannot improve it. And that is just like exactly how to sum up the wilderness and parks and,
Right, you're
and
not gonna
places
make
that we
it any
protect.
better.
You're not going to make it any better. It already is.
All you can do
So
is
just
screw
leave
it
it.
up.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of the Grand Canyon, I think by the time this episode comes out, I'll know the results. But I would open up the recreation.gov app, which is dangerous. And I clicked on the lottery section. I said, what's going on? What lottery can I enter? And I got into a Grand Canyon backcountry permit lottery to hike the rim to rim. I mean, I
Oh, no.
know the chances are so slim, but
You never know.
I basically just donated $10 to the National
Right.
Park Service. But the results come out on May 2nd, so I had to try.
Keep your fingers crossed.
See,
We've only had bad experiences with the
you've,
Whitney.
you've said a few of those, like you're diving in, you're reacting, you're all in. We're on DraftKings coming up with a single game parlay that bets $5 to win 700 on guys we've never met or never seen play a sport. So I think we should go on record. I think we should go on a different
We have a
website.
better shot to get the
We had a better shot.
You should enter the recreation.gov lotteries. That
Yeah.
app, though, when you open that app and you just like browse, like, oh, what's out there? What permit can I get? Like that gets you into some trouble because then you have trips to plan.
Yes,
But,
yeah. I went down that rat hole with the Grand Canyon rafting lottery,
Oh,
where when you know what it was? It was during COVID,
Yes.
and I'm on a mailing list now where they're like constantly sending me things. Rafting trips have just opened up, but it's like for a group of 7 or 8, like a group of 8 people, and one of them has to be a master rafter who has, whatever license. And I'm like, I don't know anybody who has the license. I certainly don't. I can't get 7 other people at the
You're telling me the Colorado River
Oh.
is in Arizona? Wait a minute.
You're going to get that call one day, Tommy, though, being like, you got 2 weeks.
Yeah,
I won the lottery.
I signed up for you.
Going rafting
you know what?
in the Grand
I
Canyon.
bet there's forums of those people with those qualifications that if you just
Sure there
write
are.
and you say like, hey, I need this
Yeah.
person that can do this, they would jump on it. But it's
Yeah.
funny you say that because we had another couple over this past weekend for game night and we played National Parks Trivia Pursuit. We were talking about just national parks. And one of the guys, his dad has been entering that lottery or the permit for like 20 years to go rafting. Well,
I
and
can
we were
get him
talking
in.
about
He's over 20?
what?
He's over
Yeah.
19?
20. He's
He's
over
over.
20. Yeah.
No, I would never.
And we were talking about how the permit system differs between the National Park Service and then the Fish and Game. And when you want a hunting tag, you apply for a permit or, whatever the language is. And if you don't get it, you are still counted. Or how do I say this? But the number, you get like a scoring system, let's say. So if you enter one year, you don't get it, there's like,
Your number
that's
goes up.
marked. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you enter the next year, you don't get it. And it's like, okay, they acknowledge that too. And so the longer you go without getting a tag, the greater your chances are because you've accumulated all of those periods of not getting it. And
Yeah.
if the national parks had just instituted that, I mean,
That's a smart
that could
way to do
increase
it.
your chances of, I've heard of so many people who have tried to get a Whitney permit or
Right.
Oh, the Whitney permit.
There should
Yeah.
be some,
There's a code to be cracked. I will crack that code.
being persistent and being one of their bigger fans, trying to get in
Should
more
be-
and more,
yeah.
right?
We need multiple identifications to get the Whitney permit, I think.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
it's just so random that they don't acknowledge the people who have been entering the lottery for years and years
Right.
and so many
right. So
seasons
somebody could
that-
just be very lucky and get it immediately, and somebody
exactly
could be,
yeah like
trying-
me if I get this Grand Canyon backcountry permit like
Which means
tomorrow
you will.
Yeah.
that would be crazy because I've never entered that lottery before.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's also it's a business, and they charge $10 for these lotteries, knowing that out of the thousands of people that enter, only a couple hundred are going to get it, and then that's
Right.
So they have a
money.
cookout and have a party with all the $10.
The money making.
It's like
Well,
going
that's
for
like-
it.
I
You know?
just tell myself I made a $10 donation to the National Park Service. Yeah,
Yes,
That's right.
not the
which
worst
is a good
thing.
thing.
So
That's a good
that
thing.
is a great thing.
yeah.
It's
Anyway.
yeah.
So what's next on the?
So
did
you were
wanna-
asking a little bit about just, some of the things in Apex to Zenith
Yeah.
coming up. One of the big things coming up, obviously, is the convention in South Dakota. And in this new issue, which is coming in June, there's a number of things. One is going to be we have a new board of directors
Yeah.
election that's ongoing right now,
It's
and I
coming to a
think
close pretty soon, right?
it closes on the 30th. So if
Tomorrow.
anybody, well, this
Tomorrow.
will come out afterwards,
Yeah.
April 30th. So the next couple of days. So we will have, I think we had 10 candidates. We'll have 5 new board members as of May 1st. That'll be announced in the upcoming issue of Apex to Zenith.
Okay.
And there are a number of kind of updates about the convention as well, around just schedule. And, Mark Straczynski's been doing an absolutely phenomenal job.
Unreal. Yeah. He's all over it.
Yeah.
All over it. He's been there a number of times. So it's going to be a really fun, well-organized, interesting convention.
Yeah.
So all of the updates in terms of just what to expect and dates and schedules and that kind of stuff will be highlighted.
I should have him back on the show to talk about updates to the convention. When I had him on last, I mean, he talked about, of course, his 50 high points. And the convention was in the very early stages, and he had just found out where it was going to be, and not South Dakota, but at the Ramkota Best Western.
He's been getting acceptances from speakers and, sort of fleshing it all out.
Yeah.
And it's going to be good.
Yeah.
The other thing in this upcoming issue, which we have not done in a while, and I'm very excited about this, is in the past issue, we put records, the Highpointing Club records for the 50 completers. And that's a obviously much smaller group than the overall group of people who have completed 48. And the records are just much more extensive. So in this next issue, we're going to have all the records. 50 completers, 48 completers, youngest, oldest, fastest, brothers, sisters, families. There's a lot of really interesting and amazing accomplishments. So
question regarding records, and that's a really cool feature because everyone wants to know.
Right.
So for podcast listeners who are wondering, am I the first person, born here that finished 50, or am I the first person from this state that finished all 50? How do they find that out? Who can they contact?
So Terry Bird, is the keeper of the records.
Okay.
And I have great respect for Terry Bird. It's a very difficult job.
Yeah.
Right? It's a lot of it's a lot of data. It's a lot of changes and updates, and through the years it has sort of evolved, right? A lot of the information wasn't necessarily asked for very early on in terms of specific dates and specific locations. So some of it has been built out over time. Okay. Clint Call, also, I have to throw a shout out to him, is kind of our database guru and maintains a lot of the data. So if you wanted, if somebody was interested, they certainly could always just send an email to us at newsletter@highpointers.org.
Okay.
Right? We can funnel it to the right person. But if you go, the very first page of Apex to Zenith has all of this first page right here. I don't know if people can see it, but it's got all of the contact information of who to call for different things. And, the magazine is probably the best, but if you go to 48 and 50 completions, that's where Terry asks people to keep him up to date when they're getting close. If you're getting close to 48, if you're getting close to 50.
Okay.
And his email is completers@highpointers.org.
Perfect.
So if you were to send an email to completers@highpointers.org, care of Terry Bird, and ask him your question, he will no, he'll be able to look and find out and give you the answer to that,
Perfect.
question
Yeah,
about, is
Okay,
this the
I'll put
first
that in
one?
the show notes as well.
Where
Thank
am
you.
I? Yeah.
I think, Tom, we were talking about, maybe Justin brought it up at some point, but like which one's the last? Who does what state last? Right?
Yes.
How many people do Hawaii? How many? You could almost sort it by that with the data. Those are the things that when people ask it, and it seems like, oh, we should actually know that, right? How many
Right.
states are the 50th, or which one is? Because some people save it for their home state, right? Or some
Right.
different
Right.
ideas, but you could sort it by the 50th state. Get a good. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's probably Hawaii and Alaska, right? At least.
It's interesting though,
And
because
then
you're
you
right,
see how it
Tommy.
shakes out after that. That'd be
Yeah.
interesting.
Some people do leave their home state for last.
Right.
Some people leave, a
They'll just-
location that other people can join them on for last.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. It really is
Right.
interesting looking at.
Well, speaking of home states, mine is Illinois. I'm not saving Charles Mound for last because it's open and I got to get it. So I'll be heading out there in the June dates. But can we talk about some Charles Mound updates now? Listeners who are on social media know that the property Charles Mound is being sold for quite a lot of money for Northwest Illinois, and the owners are what they're cooperating with the foundation, the Highpointers Club, and we're good to go. Or?
So the bottom line information is Shannon, the president of the Highpointers Club, has been in contact with the new owners.
Okay.
And, we have been, I think, appropriately very, very respectful and very, very, cautious and smart about this. This is an important thing to make sure that we can maintain access to this. It's on private land. The Wubble family has been absolutely phenomenal for many, many, many years. And the great news about it is the new owners have agreed to maintain the same degree of access as has been in the past.
That's really good news.
So,
Yeah. That's huge.
now again, the request is that people are very respectful of that, right? And I think it's important that, in fact, go ahead, Tommy. I'm going to look. I want to make sure that I give.
Yeah, I just think that the access and the easements and the stuff that's happening in the background for any of those properties. I know Dave Coville was spearheading a few of those things. That's some foresight right there. I mean, that's what's going to let this club run in the future for a lot of different places that they could run into for that. I know it was a big focus, and I think if we lose that, if we did not get that approval, that's one state we couldn't access, right? I mean, it's that serious, right? I mean, it's someone else's property, and we couldn't go on it. So I think that's kudos to everyone who had the relationship before and built it, and then and everybody who finalized it now. So I think those are the club working for itself right there. I mean, I think that's pretty impressive that those are the things that happened, right? So I think it's
Here's the important information for people. June 1st and 2nd, July 6th and 7th, August 3rd and 4th, and September 7th and 8th are the open dates. Okay? And it's private land. The owners ask that you park on the road and walk from there. So no vehicles on the lane that heads to the High Point, and no pets. Okay? So let's be respectful of that. It's very nice of them to allow us to do this. And also, please time your visit to occur during daylight hours. So don't get there at dusk and you're going up and it's getting dark and you're like, who are these people on our property? And again, thanking the Wubbles who are phenomenal. And it's just great news all around. Especially for you because you're going.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I was going to Illinois regardless of, whether or not it was open, but this works out perfectly. So I'm looking forward to going there, and I was planning on doing it in daylight and not bringing my dog anyway. So
Perfect. Perfect.
yeah.
That's
And then
good.
also, I saw in this issue the update about the Hawaii High Point with the sign that is officially on Mauna Kea that says the High Pointers Club recognizes this spot as a high point, and the natives would wish that you don't go any further because it's considered sacred land or something along those lines. Yeah.
Look, I think the great news about that is we have received many pictures of high pointers at the sign.
Yeah.
Right. And so it seems like it was a great resolution and sort of answer to that. And it looks like it's working. So I think that's great.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well,
I think that was the board did a good job there too. There's a lot of discussion on that, and I think
yeah.
at the end of the day, it's if someone's standing there, they don't know what to do. Is it going to count? Where am I going to go? Right. I think that was when it got boiled back down to that to take the stress out of someone making that decision there. I think that was again right down the right down Broadway there. I think it's a great thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So, what's next on everyone's High Point agenda?
Yeah, I was talking to you a little bit earlier. Is I've got a whole interesting, not so much high point, but extended sort of outdoor adventure trip coming up. June 1st, my daughter and I are driving cross country from San Diego back to New York, and we're hitting many of the national parks that you and John were talking about. So we're going to go to Zion National Park. We're going to go to Yellowstone. We're going to the Badlands. We very ironically are going to go to Mount Rushmore. I've never been anywhere near Mount Rushmore. Now I will be at Mount Rushmore twice in a month. Then I'll be coming back for the convention.
Who the hell goes to Mount Rushmore twice in 1 year? It's like Santiago, Chile, right?
Yeah. So I'll be scouting Mount Rushmore ahead of the convention. So hopefully I'll be able to answer people's questions.
Well, that sounds like a fun trip.
Yeah. So that I think will be not so much high pointing, but certainly a lot of outdoor. I'm going to try to do as much climbing and as much hiking and exploring as possible.
Yeah.
And then Tommy will tee up our high pointing stretch after June 20th.
Okay.
Yeah. I think we have a good idea of what we're going to be doing, right?
What is it? Can you say it?
Well, no, I mean, South Dakota's one, right? We haven't done South Dakota yet. So he's going to come up local. We're going to do Vermont or Maine or both. I don't know. I mean,
the only two we have left on the East Coast.
We save those to have
those. I'd say we knock both of those out.
Yeah, I think so.
Summer.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that'll
on a casual Tuesday and Wednesday or something,
That'll be
and then we'll
fun.
hop a flight to South Dakota. So we're going to get 3 right there. And then we got a couple other clusters we're looking at. Minnesota.
We got to get to Kentucky.
Yep, Kentucky.
We got the whole Midwest, sort of.
Ohio, Indiana. Right. We could do Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky. That's one.
Maybe we'll meet you at Charles Mound and get Illinois.
Yeah, I'll be there in the June days.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, of course, I'll be in South Dakota for Black Elk Peak. I'm going to head to North Dakota to do White Butte as well. And actually, next week here, I'm heading out to California to do the 3 Saints, San Antonio, San Gorgonio, and San Jacinto. Those are range high points. And San Gorgonio is the Southern California high point. And then San Jacinto and San Antonio are other county high points.
Those would be great.
Yeah, they're kind of iconic hikes out in Southern California, and there's still a little snow, so it's going to make things interesting. I'm going to camp on each mountain, although I realize I could easily just stay in a hotel every night, but I want the experience being out there. So it has to be done in a very concise couple days.
Yeah.
So not a lot of wandering around that I can do. And then I'm going to come back here because I forget what episode it was. I was talking to someone and we were talking about how we have a series of trips planned in our minds constantly. And whenever a window opens up to go on a trip, it's a matter of what season and what mountain you can do. And then you just pick it and go. And with my husband's schedule, that's kind of what I have to plan around now with our daughter and everything. So he got a couple days off in May, and I thought, I'll go to Southern California and do these. It's called the Three Saints. So looking forward to that. And again, it's just part of me, postpartum, getting back out onto the mountains and just working up that level that I had before I was pregnant, and getting there. And it's a journey, but I think these mountains are just perfect for where I am right now.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Three Saints. What could go wrong?
Well.
Come on.
Oh, and then you're going to go do Devil's
Devil's haircut.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking like early May.
Inside first before you tackle the devil.
I was thinking about what other big peaks I could do in early May, and I didn't want to risk it with weather windows,
Right.
because not Rainier, but like Mount Hood, that could go wrong. Just one bad. Shoulder seasons are so weird, and I don't.
Yeah.
Southern California is just guaranteed good weather, so I'm sticking to that.
Right. Yeah, we've done everything we've done so has really been, we're going to get it when we do it, right? It's just how long is it going to take?
Mm-hmm.
When we're planning the Western trips, you might not get it. You might not get Mount Hood if you're out there for so many days and it just doesn't work out, right? So, yeah, you need a little luck too, but I think that's a good approach. You're going to take down the Three Saints and then go from there.
Well, there's a lot of little challenges in Southern California. So you can do like the SoCal 6-pack, they call it. But I wanted to do the Three Saints just because of the time that I had. And I've already done one of them. I've done San Gorgonio. So I'll do it again.
Why not? Mm-hmm. That's the thing. And sometimes I'm like, people are like, oh, what else did you hike when you were in West Virginia? I'm like, nothing. Spruce Knob and that's it, But
we went to a good pizza place.
That's right. That's right. And we didn't run out. But I always want to go back to everywhere I've been so far.
I think John, when you were talking with John, he made the point, which a lot of people have made. Tommy and I have made, and a lot of your guests have made, about you can either transactionally go up and check them off, or you can really enjoy the experience. Yeah. Enjoy the location, enjoy everything surrounding it. And, in order to do that, you have to spend a little bit of time there.
Yeah. And in order to do that, you have to have the time.
Yeah.
Which I did not have in Mississippi and Arkansas and all that.
That's right.
But hopefully I can go back and, camp in the Ozark National Forest and do Mount Magazine again and stuff like that. But he's right. He's right. You do have to savor the location and the mountain for all it is. Right.
Yeah.
Absorb it all.
I think Mount Rogers was, I think the timing that was going to take overall, you had time to stop and sit a lot. I think we really took some time. We laid on the rock for a while. We were everywhere. We kind of went over, we stopped and settled in without feeling rushed. You know what I mean? So I thought those are nice, when Mount Rogers all of a sudden becomes something where you can just take as much time as you want on it. Right, because you're going to make it, and it's going to be daylight, and it's why rush it, So
you get gorgeous weather, and when all the things sort of click, it's really nice.
Yeah, you're right.
Well, it's getting to be the season, right?
I know this is the busy Highpointing season coming up.
Yeah,
so I feel like we're like sports commentators or something talking about like the season coming up and like
what do you predict? Draft this year. You pick up any good high pointers? You picked up a new high pointer.
I did.
Draft next.
Yeah.
I have in my car right now an extra issue of Apex to Zenith because I was working out this morning and a woman came up to me and said that, and she had listened, it was a different podcast. I was on a podcast that was local to our town.
Oh, cool.
So there was a guy who was like, oh, I heard you're doing this thing. It's interesting. Mm-hmm. She had heard that podcast. Her daughter climbed Mount Purcell in Connecticut, and she wanted to tell me that she was all excited because now that was her second high point. So now she may be a new high pointer. So I may have a new draft too.
Wow.
It's funny you
So I
mentioned
told her, I
that.
said, that's awesome. I said, I'll bring a copy of the magazine so you
Yeah.
know. She didn't even know there was a club. She didn't know anything about the whole thing. So we're all out there recruiting. We'll
You're
keep
right.
building.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because my last guest, Brian Carlton, episode 59, he has been collecting A2Z magazines for years.
Okay.
And he said like the neighborhood kids asked him about it and he showed them the magazine. He gave them these magazines, like a stack of them.
Nice.
And, the kids told their parents like, hey, we want to go high pointing now. And so now they're high pointers.
That's fantastic, right? Hey,
Yeah,
how else do you learn about anything,
I know.
right?
I know.
Someone tells you, you see a magazine, you hear about it on a
Mhm.
podcast. I mean,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's how things build.
That's why it's still good to have something you can feel in touch, right? You can hand it to somebody, right?
Yep,
And
you're
it's
right.
not someone you're not going to send them a link that they're not going to look at or forget about, right? Or wouldn't understand,
Yes. Yeah,
And just
exactly.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Google is not it's not what it used to be, right?
You can look
It's
at
like
the pictures.
we could all search around forever, but I'd rather just grab that and sit on the couch and look through it, right? So
Yeah.
I want
Yeah.
those kids. That's good, right? But I think everybody's up for an adventure, It seems to be that you're saying that you're going in May and there's a couple openings, and I think, when we go to the convention, that's coming up soon. I think everybody has that same mindset, right? Where can we fit it in? What can we do? What's next?
Mm-hmm.
And when you hear the stories, you just get, pretty much inspired to go, right?
You're right.
I feel like I'm behind right now somehow. Like we always kind of
We always feel like we're behind.
now. I'm like,
Like right around now, we always feel like that means we
I'll
gotta.
have 30 by July, by
We always get there.
yeah.
Well, I'm going for 50 by 50 now because I was going to do 40 and then I had my daughter. And now that I have her, I'm like, oh, I kind of want to take her with on some of these.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so
Is
50
by
by
50 on the
50.
50th birthday, or do you have the whole year after the 50th birthday to do it?
We have to ask
Well,
Terry Bird just to keep her the
that's a
record.
good question because my birthday is in February. And if I climb Denali, let's say, is my last one, I'd have to do it in June. So it would be that year, I think.
Yeah, that's fair.
If I end with Denali. But I'm 38 now, so I've got time. I'm gonna
You got
just
time.
cruise
Plan it out.
along,
Yeah.
maybe revisit. So I'm gonna revisit some this summer too. So
Yeah.
yeah. Well, this
Yeah.
has been a lot of fun. Thanks for coming back on the show.
Always.
It's always a pleasure to have you guys,
Perfect.
and really looking forward to the next issue.
Yeah, it'll be out there before you know it.
All right, perfect. Well, see you guys at the convention.
See ya.
Sounds good. Thanks, Lauren.